Well, hello there and welcome to everybody who is watching live as we are doing the Q&A with Elana Gomel and Caolán Mac, who are our authors, the authors that are joining us live today. If you have any comments, please share them on YouTube and I will be able to see them on here. And any questions, and I'll be able to put those to the two authors that we've got. There's also going to be replays possible of this video afterwards as well. So welcome if you're watching this on playback. Let me just now take away that welcome and I'll bring my writers into the studio. And I'm bringing in Elana and Caolán. Okay, hello, welcome to you both. How are you?
Well, good. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, I'll just explain to the audience that what we're here for. We are here for Obsidian. We are launching Obsidian, and these two authors have got stories in this anthology. Very good stories indeed. And they're going to sort of like introduce themselves, talk to say a couple of words about themselves. I am the editor, Donna Scott, the owner, founder of the Slab Press. We publish genre anthologies. So if you like dark space stories, then this is the one for you. If you like green science fiction stories, check out Vivid World. If you like humorous science fiction stories, check out Laughs in Space, and check us out for lots more different anthologies coming in the future. I'll just take a sip of wine because I've got a little frog in my throat. Okay, so Elana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, thank you so much. Really glad to be here. It's an amazing anthology, I have to say. I read all of it and it's like really one of the best. So my name is Elana Gomel and I'm speaking to you from sunny California, which is finally sunny after days of rain and storm. So I was born in Ukraine. I lived in different parts of the world, including China, including Italy, and now I live in the US, in California, and I'm actually an academic. So for a long time, I wrote about science fiction and fantasy, but I didn't write any science fiction and fantasy until about 12 years ago. I thought it's time, or I'll never do it. Because I always wanted to be a science fiction writer. I just took this long, academic detour to pay my bills, basically. So I started writing about 12 years ago. I now have 8 published novels, like 150 maybe stories and novellas, and a couple of collections. So interestingly, most of my novels are, in fact, dark fantasy. But my favorite genre as a critic and as a reader is actually dark science fiction. So it's only recently that I started writing dark science fiction. I can talk more about it and why I love this genre, but it's definitely my direction right now. So my novella in the collection is called City of Voices. I worked on it feverishly because I didn't see the call for submission in time, and I had 5 days, whatever. I had this idea. It was based on an idea I already had, but I worked on it really, really hard, and I'm so pleased that it's been accepted and into this really marvelous collection. So it's about it. I can talk more about about the novella and what's about and my past as from being an academic writing about science fiction to writing science fiction. And this is kind of unusual, and so I wear 2 hats. Even when I'm talking about my own writing, I can talk as an academic or I can talk as a writer. So you tell me what you want to hear.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and Caolán.
Yeah, my name is Caolán Mac. I am a translator by day and I write at night, and it's a real honor to be here.
Great. Okay, so I prepared some questions for you. And so we can see how this goes, but because some of these are very, very complicated questions. And I've also asked these questions to the other writers for the blog as well, because I think this is quite a big ask. I asked of writers to write longer stories and to submit stories that were dark and focused on space and the feelings of isolation, the fragility of the human psyche, and things like that. And so, space. I have ideas about space, and I think I asked you all what scares you the most about space. But what I would like to know from you is, how do you approach building tension in a setting where the environment itself is already quite hostile and overwhelming? And I'll ask that of Elana first.
So it's a really excellent question, because space is overwhelming because it's empty, it's a void. And this is why the most frightening thing about space is it is nothing. It is void. It's indifferent to us. It's just, when you think about the size of the universe, which is literally incomprehensible and unimaginable. So as a writer, how to describe nothing? It's literally impossible. And so as a writer, the challenge is to create an embodiment of nothingness. And this is really hard. So what I try to do in this novella is to create this feeling, when you talk about our reaction to the universe, we're talking about the sublime, which is a combination of fear and awe and wonder. So it's not just fear, it's not just horror, it's not like seeing, I don't know, a spider or something, but nor is it just a feeling of wonder or how wonderful it is, but it's a combination of both. So for me, like creating this alien civilization, which is at the heart of A City of Voices, and how this encounter with those aliens, how it impacts the human characters, is simply a metaphor for those feelings we have when we encounter the idea of infinity and eternity, which cannot be described. So this is why I love dark science fiction. It's an attempt to describe what is literally indescribable.
Yes. Okay. And Caolán, how would you answer that one? The building tension in a setting where the environment is hostile already.
Yeah. So I thought about when I am most tense myself, and I'm most tense when I am waiting. So I made my characters wait. In the tumbleweed, the freighter actually stops a little way, or it doesn't stop, but they go on escape pods from the freighter to the conglomeration of ships. So the narrator character, Theodora, just literally has to wait and wait for something to happen to her, and she just doesn't know. And she's so tense, she's so kind of wound up that she notices the lights flashing from outside on the face of the other occupant of the pod. So I made them wait. And then the other thing I tried to do was I tried to drip feed information. So I think horror really works best when, or can work very well when you don't know any more than you necessarily need to. So for example, I beg your pardon, one of the characters, Lamonia, just sort of like vanishes for most of the story. But she's referred to by the other character. Where is she? What has happened to her? Why was she here in the first place? So that was how I tried to create the tension in my story.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to go to technology. In order for us to get out in space, we would need for our technology to be quite advanced from what it already is. I do watch the what is his name? Musk things. SpaceX. I do watch those that launches, and I see how things have progressed a lot, but not so hugely that we could do interstellar travel that well. So I'd like to know, what role does technology play in your story? And do you see it as a salvation, a threat, or something more ambiguous? Caolán first.
Yeah, so actually I decided to write this in the same setting as I did. I was fortunate enough to publish a story in Vivid Worlds. So for those, I came up with a Centaurian civilization who had actually gone a different sort of a technological path. So, we tend to, right at the moment we're going down a sort of like silicon-based path. These Centaurians decided to go down more sort of like a biological computing. So there's definitely an element of mistrust of technology that necessarily comes along with that kind of like biotech route, and the fact that the tumbleweed is composed of both of traditionally technological elements and these kind of biotech elements. Yeah, I think it adds in a kind of a tension about the nature of tech, if that makes any sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. Okay, and Elana?
So I live in the Silicon Valley, literally, like where
Oh
I
my
live.
goodness.
Yeah, it's Google Town. It's the headquarters of Google, like next to basically to my building. But I am not afraid of technology as such. Actually, I am really amazed that, throughout my life, that I live to see AI, for example. So technology can be problematic in all kinds of ways, socially and so on, but I'm not afraid of it. What I'm really interested in is the nature of intelligence and what truly alien intelligence would be like. It's like my obsession, and I wrote about it, like even as an academic, I wrote a whole book about alien encounters and what happens when we encounter something that we cannot understand by definition. And now with AIs, it's also very interesting because you have this whole debate: are AIs sentient? Are they intelligent in any meaningful way, and so on. I don't want to go into it. But at the heart of my novella is this idea of an alien intelligence, or something that appears to be intelligent, which in fact, as we find out, it's really problematic even to answer the question, is it intelligence or not? So to me, technology that we have today is just a tool in exploring those really profound philosophical and psychological and existential questions, like what are we, what is intelligence, and what happens when we encounter intelligence that is so different from ourselves that we cannot communicate, cannot describe, and yet we do want to understand, we do want to have some kind of contact with it. So that's what the novella is about.
I think there's certainly an uncanniness that is really profound, and various sorts of uncanniness that are profound in your story with the emotional expectations that we have of both dealing with other humans, and where that can be problematic, and then the alien intelligences as well, the alien beings, and it really just throw you as to like your expectations in the scene, and I think well, I talk about the human psyche as well. How did you interpret the theme of the fragility of the human psyche? Okay, I'm going to start with Creelan, and then we'll go to that.
Yeah, so I guess different characters have different ways of dealing or not dealing with the fragility of their own psyches. For example, Livonia goes pretty demonstrably mad. The narrator character goes into a sort of a self-defensive spiral. Another character, Sansur, draws great strength actually from her religion, and I tried not to overemphasize that. I kind of wanted that in the background, but I suppose I was inspired by Dan Simmons and his Hyperion cantos to sort of think about that. But yeah, space is such a profoundly hostile environment, so anathema to humans, that it necessarily exerts a massive pressure on anyone who is exposed to it. And even the best laid strategies for dealing with it may go awry.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. And Elana?
So for me, most of my characters are neurodivergent, in fact, by design. So I was really interested in this issue, not about, hypothetical aliens in space, but aliens within humanity, people who are different from us for all kinds of reasons. Culturally, I lived in many different countries and cultures, and there is this frisson of difference when you encounter somebody from a different culture. So, but this kind of estrangement or alienness is also can be also found in our like most intimate relationships, because part of what my story is about is motherhood. I'm a mother of 2 grown sons, so I know, what happens when your child just behaves in a way that seems strange and alien to you, because every child does. Eventually, at some point, your child is a little alien. You hold this baby in your hands, and it's part of you, and yet it is not. It's something else. It's somebody else. So I was really trying to, in the relationship between Rumi and his mother, which to me is an emotional heart of this whole thing, is, can you love somebody you don't understand? What is mother's love? What is its boundaries? How far can it go? What happens if you don't love your child, which also happens? And it's not something people want to talk about, but it does happen. And so in a way, I wanted to show that love can overcome those differences, those misunderstanding, because they do love each other, mother and son, and yet there is this barrier that you cannot cross.
Yeah, it's like really, really difficult emotional situations to come across, and that's why I think your story works really well, and having all those neurodivergent aspects to the characters. I'm just getting used to my own neurodivergence at the moment, as I've only fairly recently been diagnosed with Tourette's in my 50s. So yeah, keeping it down right now. I'm fine. So I would like to ask you: did you draw inspiration from any particular sci-fi traditions existing out there already? Because I know that I put in my brief that I was looking for stories that were very similar to Event Horizon or Sunshine, that kind of thing. So what was inspiring you? I'll go for Elana first.
Because, as I said, I write a lot about science fiction. I still do. I have a whole Substack about science fiction. So, I won't go into a whole list. It would be like a whole academic lecture. But my absolutely favorite science fiction writer is a Polish writer, Stanislaw Lem. He's the author of Solaris, but not only. I mean, some of his other novels, which are less well known in the West, like Eden, are absolutely mind-blowing, because his entire output is about this issue of otherness, of alienness, of what, how do we encounter the universe that is basically indifferent, maybe hostile and sublime. And he was an amazing writer. Solaris, unfortunately, has been damaged by 2 stupid movies made of it. Yeah, it was very unfortunate. But if you read the novel itself, it's one of the masterpieces, not just of science fiction, but of world literature. So it's Stanislaw Lem always. But I was thinking about Ted Chiang, he's the author of Story of Your Life, which was made into the movie Arrival. So, yeah. And he's an excellent writer as well. And so I tried to do something like this. And Story of Your Life is very interesting because it's also about an alien encounter, but it also involves, mother-child relationships. So I would say this was my, my example of what I was trying to do.
Okay, and Queen, how would you answer that? Any big things that inspired?
Yeah, actually. So I mentioned Jan Simmons already. The Tumbleweed was based, actually I had a Warhammer 40,000 phase when I was a teenager, kind of took the place of Friends. So the Tumbleweed was was adapted from the space hulks that you get in that game. The Place of Bridges I actually stole from Robert Jordan. So the fantasy work, not science fiction, but it was based on the ways from that book. And then keen H.P. Lovecraft readers might recognize Martin Spawn. as being behind the creatures that attack at the end of the book. I'm sure there's lots of other intertexts that I simply don't realize are there, but those were the ones that were sort of forefront in my mind while I was writing.
Yeah, I was fresh to Hyperion Cantos last year. Did some work on it, and read the books again. And yeah, there was a couple in there I would say are a little bit, I would say, fudgy, but it's a great series. It's a great series. I would say overall a really good series, and I think I recommend. Recommend. It's good we can make recommendations here. We talked about Solaris being made into not so good films. If your story were adapted into another medium, what would you be most excited to see translated about it? Okay, I'm going to go with Caolán first.
I think, funny enough, so the story has what's the phrase? Is it a narrative conceit? Anyway, the idea is that it's supposed to be a radio transmission out in space that you, the reader, are receiving. So I think it would adapt very naturally to a podcast, some kind of a podcast format. And then that lets you do all sorts of fun things, because you can have you can do lots of fun things with sounds and not seeing things. Building tension that way. Like, what does it sound like when Ardafine gets attacked by the creatures?
Okay, and Elana?
So I have a really visual imagination, and for me, absolutely, I would love to see it adapted into film, or maybe even anime, animation, because I want to see myself, not just my readers. I want to see the City of Voices myself. I want to see. I have an image of it in my head, but it's just so much you can describe. And I've often been accused that in my novels, I have way too much descriptions, because for me, the setting, the world itself is really, really important. So I wanted to be adapted to visual media, either, live action movie or animation. And I wanted to have really interesting special effects, and I want to see the city. I was
going to say anime would work so well with that.
Yeah.
Images. I kind of had that in mind. I'm thinking of Spirited Away,
Studio
Ghibli.
Yes.
With the no face.
No face. I mean, there is this series called Scavenger's Reign, which is science fiction sort of animations, which is really stunning. So this is what I want to do. And as I said, I have a strongly visual imagination, so I always try to describe it vividly enough so my readers can visualize it in their heads.
As an editor, I appreciate that a lot. I do sometimes get to work with new writers who think that dialogue is everything and that's all you need, but their characters are in a void. And so I like to see where they are, because you haven't given me a scene. What are your characters doing? Where are they? Where is this conversation taking place? And then they don't even tell me that or anything about them. And I always think that is because a lot of people don't have a visual imagination. So they are aware that some people do, or they might even be aware that some people do, but they can't hear a description and then picture it. So I think that is a point of difference with us all. I think we assume that people will see the world in the same way that we do, but not everyone does. In fact, I might be talking to people who see things in a very different way to me. I don't know. Right now, I don't know. So we're going to ask you now about space. It can be both vast and claustrophobic. How did you approach that duality? So I'm going to ask Caolán that question.
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I suppose there's certain elements I space them out. So the freighter that the escaped prisoners arrive in at the beginning, it is obviously it's a very claustrophobic space, and then the escape pods that they arrive to the tumbleweed on are even more claustrophobic. And that takes care of the claustrophobia angle. But then right at the end of the story, it's intimated at the beginning that the freighter is on a collision course with the tumbleweed. How long will it take? At the end of the story, we find out that it's about 4 months. So it's I suppose balancing those tight corridors with literal parsecs of empty space around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always think if I were in a spaceship or in the International Space Station, like I gather the International Space Station is actually quite big. I mean, it's not vast, but there's like cubby holes and things in there. But I understand it's quite smelly. And I don't know how I'd cope with that. I really don't. Just being in a very tight space with people. Yeah, I don't think I'd be able to cope with it very well. Elana, how do you cope with the claustrophobia of the vastness of space?
So I'm absolutely fascinated with this trope in science fiction about an abandoned spaceship. You know, there are many, many novels. Again, I actually wrote a whole Substack about this idea of an abandoned spaceship and people exploring. It goes back to like Arthur C. Clarke, Rendezvous with Rama, where it's an abandoned alien spaceship. I love those things. So I wrote, as I said, I wrote an essay about it. So in my novella, most of the action actually takes place on this spaceship, which is pretty small, and it's a kind of crime scene, as we find out eventually. So it has a sort of claustrophobia of the locked room mystery, right? Because who killed those people? And yet it is in the vastness of space. And this planet itself is only seen in the recording. The City of Voices, it's not actually part of the action. It's seen, it's described, it's visualized, but it's not part of the setting per se. So if I were to expand this into a novel, I would set part of the action on the planet. But as I said, I love this idea of an abandoned, empty spaceship, which is surrounded by infinity, basically, and yet it is claustrophobic by its very nature. So it's, to me, it's a perfect, combination of claustrophobia and infinity.
I suppose some people are just drawn to those things like a challenge, like cavers and wreck divers here, and it's like they tend to be remote, difficult to reach places, or people even who climb big mountains, and they're all places where air is an issue for me. So like, that's another thing that I think of. Not only the smells of a tight spaceship, but the not being able to breathe. In fact, I was really keen on going scuba diving in Malta a few years ago, but when I tried to use the apparatus, I just couldn't do it. Absolutely couldn't do it, and I didn't think I would be claustrophobic like that, but I was. So yeah, I think one of those things that might test people if it ever came to be that we had to travel into the stars. So I chose the name Obsidian for the book because I wanted something that was very dark, and I could think of nothing darker apart from I think Meraki black, the very darkest black color. But as a color black, I thought Obsidian was quite dark, and then I thought minerals. So I'm going to be doing a series of books, and then the next one in the series is going to be pyrite, fool's gold. But as a theme, it suggests sharpness, reflection, and hidden depths. Did the name of the future anthology, did that suggest anything to you? Did that influence your tone or your structure at all? I'll ask Queen first.
Yeah, so I suppose it finds itself best reflected in the narrator character, Theodora, who is who is, as we come to realize throughout the story, very profoundly broken. I suppose like a chip of obsidian, and has a lot of sharp edges and really a lot of sort of like dark hidden depths. Like we find out that she has this whole history of growing up underprivileged in a really nasty part of Mars, and it has just made her quite ruthless, and that is something that, like, deep down she is struggling to overcome. And ultimately, well, I won't spoil the story, but you know, can she? Have to read the book to find out.
Whoa, questions. Okay, and Elana?
Yeah, so first of all, I love this idea of having a series of books, connected to minerals or to colors. I always wanted to write a collection about the color yellow, which I like very much, or even to solicit, edit a collection. Maybe at some point I will. But to me, I love obsidian. Like, I'm wearing obsidian right now. It's just a beautiful mineral, and it has this depth, So if any mineral can be thought to represent the beauty of the universe, of empty space. So we talked about the fears, the horror of the void, but there is also this incredible beauty, again, sublime combination of wonder and fear. So obsidian is black, but it's also really beautiful, and it's one of my favorite minerals. So I was really happy when I saw the title, because I thought there is no thematic connection. There's no minerals in my novella, but it's just this combination of horror and beauty, because I do hope that there is some beauty in my novella, at least in the relationship between mother and son, in this kind of love that transcends everything. So it's like obsidian to me, black, but with sparkles of something, of stars inside of it.
Yes. I'll tell you this now. I'm at EasterCon on my stall. I was sat between two ladies selling jewelry, and Crystal's lady on my right, she had a few pieces in obsidian. She had to cut, but there were different kinds. And there was snowflake obsidian that she was selling, like a necklace. But there was also reflecting obsidian. It was just beautiful. It was had fire in it. It was just lovely. They went though. I was like, well, if no one buys them, but of course they sold. So they were beautiful. I really liked her opal stuff as well. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question before the final question. So penultimate question. By the way, as a warning to the people who are watching, because we do have some audience, if you would like to ask any questions, now is your chance. If you're watching on Facebook, on YouTube, you can add a comment and I will see it. We'll see it in here, and I'll be able to bring it on the screen to ask the authors. But if we don't, we don't. Okay, so I am going to ask this question now. If readers take away one lingering question or feeling from your story, what do you hope it is? Elana?
Just this, ask yourself, how would they confront something that is so different from me, but yet that I want to understand, and something or somebody, and it applies to everything, even AIs or just people who are different. What do you do when you are confronting with the other, the alien, the different? How do we go beyond fear or conflict, or, and how complex those things are.
Yes. Okay, and Quillan?
Can you repeat the question?
What was the one lingering question or feeling from your story that you hope people take away?
Yeah. When I reread the story, preparing for the interview, what I thought about was mercy. I think that one of the major characters, Major Samsur, is a very merciful character, and I do not know myself. I've read the story, obviously, and I wrote the story, and I do not know myself if that benefits her, which sounds like a very strange thing to say, but I was trying to think of an answer. Well, like, does it work out for her? Does it not? And I just don't know. So yes, I think I certainly thought about Mercy. I'm sure that every reader will have their own opinion or will find their own things that are interesting about the story, but that certainly was what I was thinking about.
Okay, cool. Okay, so the final question then, and I haven't got anything from anybody else, so they must be satisfied with my questions. That's all I can say. What's next for you creatively? What can we look out for from you? So I want to start with Elana, and also where can we find your stuff?
Yes. So as I said, I have written like a bunch of dark fantasy novels. My last novel, which is called The Tale of Three Cities, dark fantasy. So you can find it on Amazon, just under my name. I publish under my name. But I now, especially after this collection, now dark science fiction. This is the way I'm going. I have a new novel, which is kind of roughly set in the same universe as City of Voices. It's coming out next year. I have a contract, but I'm now writing a sequel, and I'm writing a whole series of novellas and stories roughly connected to the same universe. So it's definitely now science fiction. And so thank you, Donna, for kind of inspiring, giving me this push, because I always wanted to write science fiction more than fantasy, but somehow most of my stories and novels until now have been horror or dark fantasy, not exactly horror, but now it's science fiction. So as I said, just check out Amazon, and all of my, including my academic books, are on Amazon.
Okay, cool. And do you have like a website? And you mentioned you have.
I do have a website. So I can, I don't know how to put it here, but it's called the Cities of Light and Darkness.
Cities of Light and Darkness. Okay, we can Google. That's all good. Okay then. And Queen, what about you? What have you got coming up?
Yeah, so I would really like to publish a novel. I had really been hoping to publish a novel in Irish, which is my native language, but unfortunately there's just really a dearth of publishers working in that language at the moment, so I may have to rethink that. I did have a sort of a dark science fiction novel planned, Colony Ship, which sets out and actually reaches its destination, but ends up, and the societal board collapses and just ends up spinning around and around and around around its intended destination while they all argue endlessly about what to do next. And I'd been intending to write that in Irish. The only publisher I know of that publishes science fiction in Irish is Lloyd out of Donegal. And when I wrote them about something else that I'd done, they said they had a 5-year waiting list. So that knocks that on. Yes, yeah, it's really, really bad. There's the whole story behind it, but unfortunately, that knocks that on the head. So I will have to, I'll have to see about publishing a novel. And I've really been enjoying science fiction. I think one of the things that kept me out of it was I try to make my science fiction as hard as I can when I can. I kind of stepped away from it a bit for the tumbleweed, but I really do appreciate it when authors have done their research, know at least a little bit of the science behind it. So actually, one of the things that Richard Britzel, who I mentioned in my thank you note in the book, beg your pardon, one of the things that he helped me with was he introduced me to a man called Isaac Arthur and his podcast, where he talks about the science of science fiction. So now that I have that, I think I'd like to write a lot more science fiction.
Excellent. Okay, and do you have a website or anything we can?
Thank you for reminding me. So I have purchased a domain. One of these days, hopefully before I die, I will make a website out of it. In the meantime, I'm putting everything up on Instagram. So I have an Instagram at Writer Caolán. So that's Writer Caolán. So you can find everything I do there.
Great. what I would love to say to you as well, I have worked on multilingual books before and doing the English bit, but so like Christina Mastia and Ian Watson asked me to work on a book that was 1/3 English, 1/3 Spanish, 1/3 Catalan. It was like a reissue of a story that had been like a big smash hit in Spain in the 70s, which was a post-apocalyptic story. And I thought that was a really great project. And they brought that out in conjunction with Eurocon 10 years ago. And I'm thinking for special projects, yes, why not have multilingual books? I know of a children's publisher who does French and English books because she writes for children who speak the 2 languages. In quite local to me as well. I think it's two something stories, 2 link stories, something like, or 2 language stories. Anyway, I'll probably find and put them in the comments later in the show notes. I think it's something that even though there's like not a lot of like trad pubs out there, it's probably a really good project. If you think about a couple of years ago, the book that won the Arthur C. Clarke Award was an epic poem written in Scots Orcady, like the Orcadian language and English, so that you've got those 2 side by side. So I think there is an appetite out there for multilingual books. It's just not going to be a huge one, but for special projects, why not? Just saying. Anyway, okay. With that in mind, we will bring this to a close, and we still have people watching. Hello, thank you so much for joining us. And if you have not already bought this wonderful book, please do. It has got these stories in it, and that will go to anybody who's watching this afterwards as well. Do get yourselves a copy of Obsidian, available from all good bookshops, although if you're asking for it in, say, like Waterstones or Barnes & Nobles, you might have to order it in because they won't stock it. Available from Amazon, available from the Slab Press. So lots of places where you can get it. Also available for me at book fairs. I am next in Cirencester on the 16th of May at Bingley Hall, or Bingham Hall. Anyway, it sounded a bit like Mrs. Darcy. Anyway, right, okay. So it just leaves me to thank my guests tonight. So thank you, Elana. Thank you, Caolán. It's been wonderful speaking to you. And I am going to end the stream. So want to say goodbye?
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. It was great seeing you.